In this video, I'm going over our quiz 6 questions, followed by a few review questions from our most missed as an Algebra 2 group here. So also make sure here as you're following along, here are the different versions up at the top. So that's your question number. But let's go ahead and start with number 1 here on version A. So I notice here from my function notation that we are dividing, right? So I am dividing by g of x, which is x plus 2. So I notice that because x is by itself, that I can use synthetic division. So I know here with synthetic, we always change the sign here. So this positive 2 will now become negative 2. Now also go back and double check if I need any zeros to represent a coefficient. Well, notice here I've got 3, 2, and then no x. So notice how we skip the x term. That means you needed a 0. So here I have a coefficient of 1. So 1, 6, then 0, followed by negative 10. Now I'm going to go through first step and drop by 1. Now multiply always below the line. So negative 2 times 1, negative 2. Then remember here, always then add above the line. So 6 plus negative 2 is 4. Multiply again, negative 2 times 4, negative 8. So now when you add, negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 8, positive 16. So notice how you have a remainder of 6. So here I've got x squared, that's 1x squared, because here we started at x cubed, so I need 1 less. Then plus 4x minus 8 plus that remainder, so 6 over x plus 2. So that's why here, guys, the answer was B for this question. So now going to number 2, go ahead if you need to pause it, but find your version number. And here we go. So notice how when simplifying, we cannot have I in the denominator, but I do notice this is not in standard form. So I'm going to switch it. So 7i over 5 plus 2i. Now I need to multiply by the conjugate, which changed the sign of the I. Now this becomes 5 minus 2i. What I do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. Now notice how this is just 7i. So we are just distributing that one term here. So 7i times 5 is 35i. Then 7i times negative 2i, negative 14, and they both have I, so I squared. Then remember, I squared is always negative 1. So now negative 14 times that negative 1 is now positive 14. So in my numerator, I have 14 plus 35i. They were both a positive. So I'm going to mark off A and B. Now the denominator. So remember, guys, in the denominator, you are always adding. So 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 2 is 4. So here you get 29. So that's why the answer is C. Question number 3. So here's our graph. The leading coefficient is negative. Well, here, so let me connect my ends here, or have my ends for this graph. So the leading coefficient is negative with an even degree. Well, I notice that this degree, if I'm going 1 and 1 is not even, this is odd. So I'm going to mark off A. But I also notice for B, it does say odd, but read the graph connecting the ends together from left to right. Notice what direction am I going? Down, making that leading coefficient not positive, but negative. So it's not B. So it had to be B or C. Now everything's in words, but here, remember the word approach means that arrow. So as x values, as x approach positive infinity, the f of x approach, so here's my arrow again, negative infinity. And here, this answer choice C, as x approach negative infinity, the f of x approach negative infinity. So which of these statements is true? So as I'm going towards, my x's go towards positive infinity, On the right side, what direction is our graph going? Down towards negative infinity. So the answer was B. So for those who chose C, notice how as I'm going to negative infinity, so as we're going to the left towards all the negative, notice the left side of the graph is going up towards positive infinity, but this was negative. So that's why the answer was B. Question number 4. Notice how we are solving, but I do see I need to distribute. So this is x squared minus 6x is equal to negative 13. I also need to have my equation equal to 0. So I'm going to now add 13 to both sides. It cannot be combined, so I'm going to leave it x squared minus 6x plus 13. Now there are no factors that multiply to get you 13 and add to get you negative 6. So this was using the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of your discriminant, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So just to break it apart, I'm going to notice and focus first on the discriminant. So identify your a, b, and c here. So b squared, which is negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 13. Now, when you put and solve for this, you should get a discriminant of negative 16. Now, remember, a discriminant that's negative, this meant you had two imaginary solutions. So we're going to have I. I'm not going to choose B because B doesn't have I in my answer. Now I'm going to continue and set up what x is equal to. So negative b, so negative b, which is negative 6, plus or minus. Well, now what's going to go inside of the radical? My discriminant, negative 16, over 2 times a, which is again 1. Now notice when simplifying up top, two negatives, so two negatives make a positive 6, plus or minus. Now the square root of negative 16, well, the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of negative 16 is 4i, all divided by 2. Now divide all of the three values because some people chose A. Well, yes, 6 divided by 2 is 3, but don't also forget to divide the 4 by 2 as well. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 3 plus or minus 2i, that's why here the answer was D. Question number 5. We are focusing on the volume of a box, volume of a rectangular prism, which is length times width times height. So I need 3 dimensions, right? I've got my length, which is x plus 5. I need width, which is 2x minus 1. And I need height as well, which is x. So remember, guys, here you had to multiply 3 dimensions. So I'm going to start with my first 2 and go ahead and you could do FOIL, or I'm going to go ahead and set up the box. So x and positive 5, 2x and negative 1. So this is 2x squared, 10x, negative 1x, and negative 5. Then combine your like terms because that is 10 minus 1 here, which is 9x. So I've got 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. However, then some people paused and just said my answer was A. But however, notice that we still need to multiply by x. So you do have to distribute an x term here. So when you distribute the x, you have 2x cubed plus 9x squared minus 5x. That's why the answer was B. And watch your signs because some people chose C, but that was a negative 9x squared, not positive. Question number 6. This was the binomial expansion here. So notice how I have x plus 2 to the 4th power. But we only need the third term, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and set up though. So with an exponent of 4, I need to use the coefficients of 1, 4, 6, 4, and 1. Then my first term is just x. So I'm going to list my x. Then here we're going to the fourth power. So I'm going to start to the fourth power. 3, 2, 1, 0. Then the second term is a positive 2 here. So 2 listed all the way down. Then again, now with that exponent of 4, but now bottom to the top. Then here I'm going to focus on test-taking strategies because all I need is the third term for this answer, which is right here. All I need is the third, which has a coefficient of 6. So 6 times, well, that's just x squared, but I have 2 to the second power. What's 2 to the second power? 4. But what do I need to do with that 4? Multiply it by 6. 6 times 4 is 24x squared. That's why the answer was A. Question number 7, you're finding the quotient, which is just an answer to a division problem. But notice here, we do have to do long division. And then I'm going to go back and check, do I need a 0 to represent any of my terms? No. 3, 2, 1, 0. So we're good. We're not missing anything. So I'm going to set this up. And then divide the first term into the first term. 5 goes into 5 one time. Then remember, guys, here I'm taking out 1x, so not x cubed still, but x squared. Then multiply. Now, when I multiply to that 5x, this will always match up, 5x cubed. Don't forget to multiply the 5 to the negative 8 here. So 1 times negative 8 is negative 8x squared. But then what do we have to do? Change the sign. So this is now a negative and a positive. So this becomes 0. And then now I need to combine. That's 30x squared, but then bring down the negative 23x. Now I divide again, first term into the first term. 5 now into the new first term, which is 30. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 1 less x, so 6x. Then multiply. Well, that's 30x squared, but don't forget to multiply that 6 to the negative 8 here. So now I've got negative 48x from multiplying. And again, don't forget here, before you combine, change the sign. So that's a negative, but now a positive. So this is 0. When you combine, you do get 25x. Bring down negative 30. Then again, divide the first into the first term, which is now 25. 5 goes into 25 5 times. So now here, when I multiply, you will get 25x, but don't forget to multiply the 5 to the negative 8, which gives you negative 40. Then one last time, change the signs. So now they're both positive. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not a positive. That's now a negative. Sorry about that. Then you get 0, but you do get a remainder of 10. So 10 over 5x minus 8. So that's why here, when I take a look, my answer was C. Question number 8, I have g of x and h of x. I am looking for h of x minus g of x. So notice how this was a subtraction problem. Watch the order. This is h of x. Well, what's h of x? 3x squared plus 5x minus 10. Then we are subtracting from that g of x. Well, what was g of x? Right here. 7x cubed minus 4x squared plus 1. Then remember, guys, before you start combining, if it's a subtraction, distribute that negative or negative 1. So this is still 3x squared plus 5x minus 10, but now change the signs. Positive 7, negative 7x cubed. Negative 4, positive 4x squared. positive 1, negative 1. Then start combining. Notice how this is a negative 7x cubed and nothing else to combine it with. So I'm just going to bring it down and mark off C, because C is for those who did not follow the order of the problem given. Then combine your x's. So this is 3x squared plus 4x squared, which is now 7x squared. Then continuing on, I only have my one x term here, so I'm going to bring it down, plus 5x. We do have negative 10 minus 1, which is negative 11. So that's why here the answer was D. So now the bonus question. So with this bonus, Sarah is trying to put carpet in her dining room. So this is the wood floor in the center of it with these dimensions, the wood floor, and this is the dimensions for the carpet. But all you needed to do was figure out was the amount of carpet that she needs, which is not the whole thing, just this section here. And if this is the amount of space that the carpet is using, this is an area problem. And remember, area is length times width. You're multiplying. So I'm going to start with the area of the carpet. So this is setting up a 3 by 2. So I've got 2x squared plus 5x plus 4 times x minus 3. So now when you fill in, you have 2x cubed, 5x squared, 4x, then here negative 6x squared, negative 15x, and negative 12. Then of course combine your like terms. So I have only my 2x cubed, but I do have negative 6 plus 5, which is negative 1, so negative x squared. Here I have my x's, negative 15 plus 4, negative 11x minus 12. Now, a lot of people just said that's my answer, but keep in mind that is for this whole thing, including the wood. I don't want the wood. So now I'm going to find the area of this wooden section here, which again is multiplying. I'm going to set up the box, which is x squared minus 2 times x minus 7. So this is x cubed, negative 2x, negative 7x squared, and positive 14. Now notice there are no like terms to combine. So this is x cubed minus 7x squared minus 2x plus 14. So now think about this, right? If I'm looking for just the space for the carpet, which is all of what's in red, not including the wood, right? That's in blue. That means if I'm taking this out, what am I supposed to now do with these two polynomials here? Subtract. So I'm now going to subtract this amount. And remember, when subtracting, we always change the sign. So I've got 2x cubed minus x squared minus 11x minus 12. Then minus x cubed, now plus 7x squared, because remember here, right, we're subtracting this polynomial, that's the wood part, plus 2x minus 14. Then combine your like terms. So here I've got 2x cubed minus x cubed, which is x cubed. Then I've got negative x squared, but plus 7x squared is 6, so 6x squared. Next I've got negative 11x plus 2x, which is negative 9x. Then the last, negative 12 minus 14, negative 26. So that was the expression for our bonus question. So now getting into our 4 review questions, these are the 4 most missed. So just kind of getting some practice in. We're going to be doing these together. So try these. So I would say pause the video, try to do this one on your own, and then let's see what you get. And here we go. So notice how the denominator is not in standard form. So you do have to rewrite this. So I've got 12i over 6 plus 3i. then multiply by the conjugate, which is 6 minus 3i, right? Change the sign of the imaginary part. So now, notice how this is just 12i. I'm now going to distribute my 12i here. 12i times 6 is 72i. 12i times negative 3i, negative 36, but I squared, because they both have I times I. Then here, remember, I squared is always negative 1. Notice two negatives will always make a positive 36. So 36 plus 72i. Then the denominator, so remember the trick, right? You're always going to add in the denominator. So 6 times 6, 36. 3 times 3 is 9. So our denominator is over 45. Now you could leave this as is, or even go further and practice simplifying, because I notice I could divide everything by 9. So if I were to divide by 9 and simplify, you end up with 4 plus 8i over 5. So now this one, go ahead and pause the video, try this one on your own. Let's see what you get. And here we go. Notice how x is by itself, so when dividing, I can use synthetic division for this. Change the sign to now a positive 2, but you should have noticed you were missing the x term, so you do need a 0. 7, negative 11, 0, negative 17. Bring down the first term, which was 7. Always then multiply below the line. 2 times 7 is 14, then add above. You get 3. 2 times 3 is 6, add to get 6. 2 times 6 is 12. You add to get that remainder of negative 5. So now here, if I started at x cubed, I'm now going to start at x squared plus 3x plus 6 minus 5 over x minus 2. So now pause the video here. This is just identifying if the degree is even or odd, leading coefficient is positive or negative, and then the end behavior. So as x approaches positive infinity, what's f of x approaching? And as x is approaching negative infinity, what's f of x approaching? And here we go. Notice how both ends of the graph are both pointing the same direction. So this is an even function. Now they're both going downward. So this is a leading coefficient that is negative. And because they're both going down to negative infinity, as x approaches positive, my end is approaching negative. And even as my x is approaching negative, my end is also approaching negative infinity. Then the last one. So go ahead and pause it. And here we go. So notice you had to distribute first. So this is x squared plus 8x is equal to negative 25. Then your equation has to equal 0 in order to solve. So you needed to add 25 now to both sides. So this is x squared plus 8x plus 25. Now 5 and 5 multiply to get you 25, but only add to get you 10, not 8. So that's why here you had to use quadratic formula. I'm going to first identify the discriminant. So b squared, A, B, and C. So b squared, which is 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 25. Now, when you solve for the discriminant, that b squared minus 4ac, you should get negative 36. So notice with that negative, you should have I in your answer because I have 2 imaginary. Now I'm going to continue to solve for x. Negative b, which was, again, 8. Plus or minus, what's going to go inside of that radical? Negative 36 here. Divided by 2 times a, which is 1. Now when simplifying, you still have negative 8. Plus or minus, well, the square root of 36 is just 6. So the square root of negative 36 is 6i over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now notice we can divide both values by 2. So that is negative 4 plus or minus 3i.